Welcome to online lectures by CA Studies. For more lectures online, please do visit castudies.lk.
Welcome back to this session, and today we will be discussing about business environments, which is the second part of the first syllabus coverage area, right? So what we are seeing in business environment is we'll be trying to understand what organization environment is, what are the different types of stakeholders who are involved or who has interest over the organization, and we'll be studying the types of the environment on which has influence over the businesses, which is basically three types as internal, task and general environment. We'll be studying the impact that each of those levels have over the organization and how the organization should plan accordingly, right? So the first part is organizational environment. So we'll be start by defining what organization environment is. Right? So organization environment is both internal and external factors that impact the activities and decision making within organization, right? So organization environment by definition is both internal and external factors that impact the activities and decision making within an organization, right? So now this business environment is formed by a group of people or group of parties called stakeholders, right? So now we'll see what or who stakeholders are. So stakeholders are a group of people who has interest, which also means stake, over the organization, right? So stakeholders by definition is people or groups who have interest in the organization's activities, right? So here, to better understand the stakeholders could be categorized into two categories: internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Internal stakeholders are the stakeholders within the organization and on whom the organization has some level of controls, right? For example, could be the shareholders of an organization, right? And could be employees within an organization or the management of the organization. And external stakeholders could be external parties out of the organization who has an interest on the organization. It could be the state, the government, right? Or could be the pressure groups which has interest on the company. And also it includes parties like the suppliers, customers, because they are also external when it comes to the organization, right? So to better understand the stakeholders of the organization, their impact to the organization, and how much of effort the organization should allocate to those stakeholders, there is this model called Mendelow's stakeholders matrix, which is what we are going to discuss now. Okay, so this is Mendelow's stakeholders matrix. Okay, and it has 4 parts. This axis is for level of interest, and this is for the power. This is low power, high power. This is low level of interest and high level of interest, right? Okay, so now we are going to understand this graph and we are going to categorize the stakeholders within these 4 categories, right? So category A is lower power. So we'll put the names A, B, C, D, right? So category A has lower power, and as you can see here, the level of interest also low. We say low interest. Okay, so we'll finish one by one and move to the next one. So level A, as you can see, is they don't have much power over the organization, and they don't have much interest also, right? So what kind of people do you think would come into this category? These are small customers. Examples. These are not the only type of people who will come into this category, but for example, small customers, small suppliers, right? They don't have much power over the organization. At the same time, they don't have much interest also on the organization, because even if something happens to the organization, it doesn't affect them too much. So all what the organization has to do for this category of stakeholders is just monitor. They just monitor and see, like, that is just keep an eye. Why they should keep an eye on this organization? They just have to give minimum effort here, right? Minimum effort. Okay, because as you can see, they don't have much power over the organization. Like, even if they are lost, or even if these stakeholders are gone, the organization doesn't have much of an impact, because they don't have much power and they don't have much interest also, right? So organization just monitor them just to see if one of these people could have more power, or what if one of these people have a high level of interest. And what if one of the smaller supplier today can become one of the key supplier in the next year, or what if the key small customer today becomes one of the key customer of your organization in the next year. So just for that, the organization monitors these customers or suppliers, and they just keep an eye on them, and they just give minimum effort to these kind of stakeholders, right? And the second category of stakeholders is where they have high level of interest. High interest, and they have low power. Example, employees, pressure groups, right? So if you look at this category, these people have a very high level of interest on the organization. For example, the employees, they have a very high level of interest on the organization, because if the organization is going in the right direction, if it is making good profits, which in turn ensures their job security, and they might have bonuses and increments and all. So just to see if, for their own benefits involved, they have a high level of interest on the organization. On the other hand, they have lower power, an individual employee doesn't have too much of power compared when it comes to a bigger level organization, right? So what the organization do for these kind of people is inform them and ensure no major issues are there, right? So for employees, they just inform, they maintain some level of transparency with their employees to show them this is the profit that we have made in this year and we are in the right direction. And for pressure groups, they show we have done this much of environmental eco-friendly products, or we were not harming the environment in any way, we were taking good care of our employees, and they just have to inform them and ensure that there is no major issues. As long as there is no major issues, they just go ahead with whatever they are doing, right? So the category C is organization, the type of stakeholders who have high power and at the same time low level of interest. One of the good example for this category is the state or the government or regulatory bodies, right? A government has very high power over an organization, right, through the regulatory system, but individually for an organization it has lower level of interest, because there will be hundreds of thousands of organizations and government definitely won't have much of resources or time to show interest on organizations individually, right? So what organizations do for these kind of these category of stakeholders is keep them satisfied, right? Because for government, for example, they don't have much of interest, so as long as they are satisfied, they won't interfere with your business, right? You can function as in the way you want as long as you are complying with the laws and regulations of the country or the system, right? So you just keep them satisfied. And the next level and the important level is the set of stakeholders who have high power and high level of interest, right? This is the key group, this is the key players of the organization, right? Key players. So this includes people like owners, shareholders, investors, key customers, not like minor customers, key customers, key suppliers. So what organization should do for them is make the greatest effort to satisfy them, because they are the key players of your organization, right? So I'll explain this picture or this matrix as a bigger picture, right? So there could be stakeholders who have lower power and lower interest. So organizations also doesn't have to spend much of their energy for them, just have to monitor them, right? And there are stakeholders with high power and low interest, government. So we just keep them satisfied, follow the rules, and that's it. And there are organizations with low power and high interest, we keep them informed and ensure that no major issues are there. Employees and pressure groups. And then there is the key players of the organization, right? Key players who have high power and high interest, and we give the great effort to satisfy them. And this model is used to analyze or to categorize the stakeholders and to make the organizations understand how much of effort they should put on each of the stakeholders, right? So if you want to take notes or write it down, you may pause and write. Right. Now we have a basic understanding of what stakeholders of an organization are, right? So now we are going to move on to the business environment. Right? So business environment can be categorized or classified into 3 categories. Okay, so each of the categories we'll be discussing in detail. So we have internal, and the layer above it we call it task environment, and another layer above it we call it general environment. Okay. So internal environment, as the name suggests, is the stakeholders within the organization, right? This is the organization, the stakeholders are within the organization. For example, employees of an organization, right? The management of the organization, the management style of the organization, the culture, the organizational culture within the organization, the values of the management, things like that, which are within the organization and on which the organization has control over it. Okay. So let me write that again. Internal environment is where organization has control. Organization has some level of control over this, or rather high level of control compared to the other categories over these internal environmental factors. Okay, and the next part is the external environment. So internal and external, the first classification. External. So external environment is where both the task and general environment are falling into. Task and general, because it is out of the organization. Okay, all aspects from the environment in which the organization operates, which are not in the direct control of the organization. So employees, the organization has direct control over. Stakeholders, the management of the organization has direct control over. The values and everything, organization has direct control. The word control, direct control. Whereas for external, organization doesn't have direct control, right? So that is why we call them external environment. An external environment can be further divided into 2 categories as task environment and general environment, right? And we will just discuss on the definition of what task environment and general environment is. So task environment is external environment of the organization that influence its ability to reach its goal, and organization has some level of direct involvement, right? And all the factors affecting the organization indirectly are general environment. So for example, we'll write the example and discuss it. Competitors, customers, suppliers, and on the general environment, there is a model called, or an acronym called PESTEL, which is political, economical, social and cultural, technology, environment, and legal. PESTEL model, right? So as you can see here, competitors, customers and suppliers are the people or the parties who are directly dealing with the organization. Competitors are on the lookout what the business is doing, and we as the organization also look for what the competitors are doing. Customers buy from us, and suppliers who supply goods to us, the supply chain, customers and the suppliers. So task environment, the main difference between task environment and general environment is task environment has a direct or involvement with the organization, whereas in general environment it is indirect relationship between the organization and those factors, right? And now we are going to discuss in the briefly what each of these factors are, right? So we can start with internal environment, right? So internal environment, there's nothing in detail to discuss. So organization, as I explained earlier, organization can control directly and has a direct relationship. Okay, and I'll explain briefly why internal environment is very important to an organization, right? So this is where an organization can understand its strength and weaknesses within the organization, right? So could be their employees, they can identify what are their strengths or what they specialize in using their management culture, and what are their weaknesses, right? Might have heard of this SWOT model: strength, weakness, opportunities and threats. So strength and weaknesses come from the internal factors, right? And why these internal factors are important is this is the heart of the organization, and it is something that the organization has direct control over. If there is a weakness, organization can make measures to turn that weakness into a strength because it has control over the factor, right? And that's all that is there. You need to learn about internal factors, right? And now, before moving on to the task environment, we will be discussing in detail, in summary about the general environment, that is this part, the pestle model, right? So in our study pack, they have taken political, or we'll just go with the abbreviations. They have taken political, economical and legal and discussed commonly, right? Because one common thing between all these three factors is involvement of the government, right? When it comes to political or economic factors and legal framework of the country, like government is a key party that is involved. So we'll start discussing with political, right? Political environment and why it is important for an organization, right? So say if in a country the politics is very stable, right? If the government is stable, if the parties are stable and the government policies are stable and the government is motivating or promoting businesses, then the businesses can easily grow themselves up, right? But on the other hand, if the government is not stable, if their policies are not stable, and if those are constantly changing based on what the people are requesting, then the businesses will have some difficulties or some hardships to adapt to those changes, right? And if there is corruption in the business or in the the government, then the organizations might have some trouble adopting, or organizations will have some trouble in expanding their businesses because there is corruption, right? So these are the main impacts that politics has on an organization. So number one is the stability. The more the politically stable the country is or the system is, the more favorable it is for the organization. And then that we have corruption. Lower the corruption, better it is for the organization. Foreign policies, how the government maintains their relationships with the the other countries, which in turn will help you to maybe increase your imports or exports. And then the tax policies, right? So political environments is just simple as this, right? All what you need to do is whether the government is stable or unstable, which how it impacts the organization, and if there is corruption or not, and the foreign policies of the government and the tax policies. So that's all with the political environment. And the government's impact is something that we need to discuss, right? Because government is something that has impact on all of these three factors, right? And government is how government can influence a business. Number one is capacity expansion. So this is government's impact or role, right? So capacity expansion is, for example, say if the government want to promote a particular industry, then the government can give grants or maybe tax exceptions to that particular industry, right? Say for example, if government want to promote locally manufactured medicines or pharmaceutical drugs, then government itself can give some tax relief, or it can give some, it can support with some capitals or loans to promote those businesses for some period of time. And also it can help with some consulting or providing new business opportunities, right? To let those businesses to exports when they promote exports. So for particular industries, so say for pharmaceuticals, if the government is promoting for the locally manufactured pharmaceutical drugs to be exported, then the local manufacturers of pharmaceutical drugs have an impact, like they could grow their businesses, right? And the second one is incentives funded by the government. How government helps particular like small and medium scale businesses, right? So small and medium scale businesses, government is giving so many incentives for those businesses to grow, right? Could be low interest loans or capital grants and everything. And overseas grants, like the foreign grants. And the next one is an important point, demand, right? Now government can increase or decrease demand for a particular good. How government can do it? Okay, so one way government can do is by regulating the price of the good. So as you may know, or as we will discuss in the future lessons, price and demand has a direct relationship, right? The price goes down, the demand goes up, and the price increases, demand goes down. Okay, so how the government can control the demand here is if they give tax reliefs to the producers of certain products, then which in turn will reduce the price of the products. So when the price of the products come down, the demand for the goods increase. And on the other hand, the government can go to the other side as well. Government can increase taxes to the particular good, which in turn will increase the price of the good, and which we are increasing to decrease the demand for the goods. For example, for pharmaceutical drugs manufactured locally, government is reducing the tax, import tax are reduced. So in that case, the price of the output will also be reduced, which in turn will increase the demand for the goods, right? Whereas on the other hand, for some products, for example, say like cigarettes, right? The government is imposing more and more taxes, which in turn will increase the price of the good, expecting the demand to come down. So this is how government plays a major role in controlling the demand of the goods, right? And the next part is, or the next influence the government has is entry barriers. And the next is infrastructure. So entry barriers is instances where government has a set of regulations when a business want to enter into a different industry. Say for example, if an organization want to be a financial institution, if someone wants to start a bank, there are so many regulations which are there. There are so many entry barriers for an organization to become a bank or a financial institution. Central bank is regulating directly. There is so much of regulation, the capital requirements which has to be met, right? And so before an organization is formed itself, there are barriers. So which is an advantage for the existing companies or existing organizations in that industry, because they know there won't be much more competitors coming in, right? So that is one way our government controls the organization, entry barriers. And the next part is infrastructure. So infrastructure is the support system based on which organizations function. It could be like, you know, the road system, the electricity system or water system and everything. So better the infrastructure, easier it is for the organizations to carry their business operations smoothly, right? So that is the impact government could have on an organization, right? So that covers our first letter P. And the next part is economical factors. Now this is a very, very broad area, right? So as we move on to our future lessons, when we start to learn economics and when we start to learn what is demand and supply, we will be gaining a in detail understanding of the economical factors and how it could affect the organization, right? So I'll first write down what are the main impact of an from economical environment, and then we will discuss. So first one is growth rate. Second one is interest rates, yeah, exchange rate, interest rate. Interest rates, inflation. I mean, there are so many factors. Unemployment, yeah, income levels. Right? So as I told you just before a while, economical factors is a wide area. It is so wide that the subject is even not enough to cover all the impact that economical factors could have on an organization, right? So some of the factors that has been noted here is the growth rate of the country. So if the country is growing steadily, then the businesses also will have potential to grow along with to keep up with the growth rate of the country. And the next factor is exchange rate, right? More stabler the exchange rate is, more easier it is for the organization, especially when they are involved in international businesses, right? So if an organization is importing goods, when an organization is importing goods from a different country, if the exchange rate is going up, it becomes unfavorable for the organization. And on the other hand, when the exchange rates are going up, it is favorable for a company or an organization which is exporting to the other country, right? Same like for interest rates, right? When the interest rates are coming down, the cost of borrowing will be lower, right? So say if for earlier, if a organization could obtain a loan at 5% interest, which means their cost, if they take 100 million loan, 5% of the interest would be just 5 million. So which gives organization power or space to borrow more fund, right? Because the cost of the interest is very low. Whereas on the other hand, say for example, if the cost of borrowing is 20%, if the interest rate is 20%, if the organization has to obtain 100 million loan, it will have to pay 20 million as their interest expense, right? So in an instance like this, the organization will be struggling to expand because of the increased cost of capital, right? So lower the interest rate, the beneficial it is for the organization. And the income levels, like if the income levels of the people are increasing, which means the purchasing power of the customers also has increased, which means the demand will also increase. So higher the purchasing power, higher the income, the better it is for the organization. And the next one, as it is there, is unemployment rate. So unemployment rate, when the unemployment rate increases, when more people doesn't have job, which will decrease the purchasing power of the people. So if everyone is employed, more people will have more purchasing power because of the income that they are earning from their employment, right? So lower the unemployment rate, more beneficial it is for the environment or the organizations, right? So that is with the E element of the model, environmental. And the next model is legal. When it comes to legal model, so all that is there is just a set of laws, there is criminal law, labor law, and then there is company law, employment law, right, health and safety data, and tax related laws as well, right? So how the legal factors affects an organization is, if the legal factors is favorable to an organization, business organization can grow or expand easily, right? But it basically sets a limit as to what the organization can do and what the organization is not allowed to do or limited to do, right? So labor law says how the employee should be treated. These are the laws that you should adhere to, and if you don't adhere or stick to these laws, there are penalties or punishments or fines or whatever, right? So these are the laws which an organization has to adhere to. Health laws, where the organization has to stick to, adapt to some health and safety regulation, right? If it is a construction organization, you need to wear a helmet and you need to wear specialized shoes which will prevent you from injuries, and you need to wear luminous vest coats just in case if you go missing or if something happens to the building, it will be easier to find. And there are safety regulations which are imposed legally, which need to be adopted by all the organization. And data laws relating to data, when you are handling large number of customer personal details, right? So these are the elements or the impact that the L factor has, right? The legal factor has. Okay. So basically we have covered 3 elements of the pestle model. We have covered political, economical and legal. Okay. So before raising it, I'll quickly summarize what political, economical and legal environment means and what kind of impact that it could have. So political, we look at the stability of the country, the corruption, foreign policies and the tax policies of the country. And economical factors, we consider factors like growth rate of the country and the exchange rate, interest rate, inflation, income levels and unemployment levels. And legal, we look at all the laws like criminal law, labor law, company law, health and safety requirement, data protection policies or data protection requirements, and the tax. So now we will move on to the other 3: social, technology and environment. Technology is a bit wider area compared to the other, with the current environment and globalization and everything that we are living in. So social and environment are going to be just 2 short subjects. So let's move on to these 2 subjects now, or 2 areas now. Right. Social. So what kind of factors, social, cultural and demographical? Right? So what we will be discussing here is what are the social factors that affect the organization decisions.
Thank you for watching the video. Stay tuned with castudies.lk for more lectures online.